Acoustic guitar strings, gauges, features and best brands. If the electric guitar strings have an important weight in the final sound of the instrument, in the case of the acoustic guitar, the strings play an even more important role in terms of the dynamics, resonance and tone of the guitar. Unlike electric guitar strings, acoustic guitar strings have 4 strings usually wound in bronze or phosphor bronze. Bronze wound strings are known for having a bright sound, but after several hours of use they begin to lose the brightness characteristic of new strings, tending to sound sweeter as their use increases. This is even preferred by some guitarists looking for a warmer sound. Since bronze is made of an alloy of copper and tin, there are 2 alloys on the market with different percentages of both components. One of these alloys would be 80-20, with 80% copper and 20% tin. This alloy gives the wound of the strings a very bright tone, as opposed to the warm tone of the 85-15 alloy with a higher percentage of copper. Although, as I have mentioned, the characteristic shine of new strings will not last long if subjected to continued use. However, for guitarists who want more corrosion-resistant strings, they should opt for phosphor bronze strings, the most popular type of acoustic guitar string on the market. Although phosphor bronze gives the strings a slightly harder feel, and they have a less bright tone than 80-20 strings. And although these types of strings are more durable, it never hurts to clean the strings after playing, regardless of the composition of their materials, to extend their useful life. There are also strings coated with a very thin layer of polymer that prevents premature corrosion of the strings. This coating will extend the life of the strings, while providing a softer feel and a sound with less squeaking. However, this layer will affect the characteristic tone of the strings and their sustain, and although this is not necessarily a negative thing, it is something to take into account. Initially, wound strings were rolled on a round core until D'Addario incorporated the hexagonal core for a better grip of the winding to the core. Currently, this is the standard core in the manufacture of strings, although today they are still manufactured with both systems. As for the differences between the 2 cores, the hex core provides greater brightness and a flared attack. On the other hand, the round core provides greater flexibility and greater sustain. The rolled of the strings can be roundwound, halfwound or flatwound. The most commonly used is the roundwound, as it is the most economical to produce, considered as the standard. Roundwound strings offer a brighter sound than other types of windings, but are more prone to squeaking when you slide your fingers over their rough surface. Flatwound provides a smooth, squeak-free surface and produces a warmer sound. This type of wound is often used on hollow-body electric guitars to achieve a very warm, squeak-free sound, ideal for developing genres such as jazz. In any case, flat would be rarely used on guitar, although it is very common on electric bass strings. And finally, wound halfwound is similar to the circular winding, but with a recess applied to the top of the string to provide a smoother surface. This type of wound be in an intermediate zone in terms of tone and noise reduction between roundwound and flatwound. As with electric guitar strings, their gauge or thickness directly influences the comfort of playing and the overall sound of the instrument. On the market, we can find the gauge 945 for the thinnest sets. The first number indicates the gauge of the thinnest string, and the second, that of the thickest string. The thickest gauges can go up to 1656, an extremely heavy gauge specific for resonator guitars capable of withstanding very high tension. As the gauge increases from thinner to thicker, the volume of the guitar would also tend to increase, and the sound would become more full-bodied. At the same time, it would become more difficult to stretch the strings, and this would affect the comfort of playing, known as guitar hardness. The hardness of the guitar is something that usually worries many guitarists. Before lowering the string gauge to obtain greater softness with the consequent loss of body in the sound, we should ask a professional for advice to check both the nut and the saddle of our acoustic guitar. Such an adjustment can significantly improve the comfort of the instrument if the expert considers that both parts are at an inappropriate height. Once both parts have been properly adjusted, we should begin to lower the gauge of the strings until we reach a certain level of comfort. But we should not expect the strings to be as soft as those of an electric guitar, since these are different instruments. An acoustic guitar will always be considerably harder than an electric guitar, and they are highly recommended for getting our fingers in top shape. However, after continued use of the instrument, our fingers will begin to become hardened, and there will come a time when the process will reverse, to finally start using heavier gauges. If we go into more detail regarding string gauges, the 945 gauge is primarily suited for easy bending. This gauge is typically used on long-scale electro-acoustic guitars, because the volume of the instrument is noticeably affected if it is not connected to an amplifier. Or to put it another way, the 945 gauge is of little when used acoustically. The 1047 gauge is a thin gauge for acoustic guitar, but because of its comfort, it is one of the best-selling sets. However, such a thin gauge can affect the body of the sound and resonance of the instrument. Strings 1152 offer an optimal compromise between comfort, volume, and dynamics, a very versatile gauge used for both strumming and fingerpicking techniques. The 1254 set still maintains a certain versatility, especially in experienced hands, although they can start to feel a little hard on long-scale guitars, especially for less experienced players. And the 1356 are highly prized by rhythm guitarists who want a full-bodied, voluminous sound. Generally speaking, when it comes to sound, larger guitars like Dreadnought or Jumbo are better suited to thicker strings. Smaller guitars like parlor or concert guitars are better suited to slightly thinner strings. You can watch the video Types of Acoustic Guitars if you need to go a little deeper into the subject. You will find links in the cards, in the description, and at the end of the video. Although to give you a general idea, the standard would be a 12 gauge that can withstand heavy strumming with a pick on large-bodied guitars, and an 11 gauge for fingerpicking on smaller-bodied guitars. As for the most popular brands in the development of acoustic guitar strings, we can find major manufacturers in the development of acoustic guitars such as Martin or Gibson. As for brands specializing in string manufacturing in general, the most influential manufacturers on the market would be D'Addario and Ernie Ball. Both brands have a wide catalog with all types of alloys and gauges. The GHS brand is distinguished from other major manufacturers by using a round core in some of its products, instead of the more commonly used hexagonal core. And the DR brand for being one of the few manufacturers that hand-wind their strings. The Elixir brand is a specialist in coated strings. The 80-20 alloy can be found with two types of coating. NanoWeb is the thin coating that most closely resembles the feel and sound of uncoated strings. Polyweb a thicker coating for a softer feel and a warmer tone. Once you understand all the factors that influence the characteristics of the strings, it will be much easier for you to orient your acoustic guitar towards the sound you want to achieve and its comfort level.